All right, there you go. Um, you just said something so crazy to me that blew my mind. You said you had a philosophy teacher that said just because it's politically correct doesn't mean it's right.
Correct. Yep. He used to say that all the time.
That's insane that you had you don't normally hear of professors or teachers or something like that making statements that way.
Oh, he was a very interesting person. He also used to say, and people tend to do this, he used to say, that's to explain the obscure by the more obscure. And we find that that happens often too. People are trying to explain something about some point, and then they go further down the rabbit hole with something super obscure, and it doesn't jive with the original point. So I know I spent a lot of time walking the halls of university and talking about things that I haven't talked about since.
So where did you go to school exactly then?
I went to the University of Victoria.
Victoria, British Columbia?
Yep, in Canada, and did my philosophy degree, and God, I graduated in '99. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. And did you go straight into being an officer, a police officer, law enforcement from there, or did you do something different to start out with?
No, I've done a ton of things. So I was in some of the occupations that I've held over the last 20 years have been, I was in radio for 5 years. I ended up doing paranormal investigation. I was a bouncer for 18 years, private investigator. And I became a police officer. Obviously, I own my own martial arts school, and internet entrepreneur. I think I did it the other day. It was like 15 different companies that I've started, and some have been successful and some haven't. And yeah, so I'm all over the place.
Holy smokes, 15 different companies?
Yeah.
That's crazy awesome. You just you get an idea and you just go with it.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's changed. So my latest idea, which is called Chaos, has been something that's been rolling around in my head for the last 10 years. And then I'm going to go off on a tangent for a sec. So when COVID hit, I run a martial arts studio, and I've been doing that for the last 17 years. It's a passion of mine, love it. It's amazing. But obviously we had to shut down just like everyone else. So I had all this time to be creative. And in the last 5 months, it's been the most creative I've ever been in my life. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go with my idea that's been in my head. And I didn't want COVID to knock me down. And so basically my business was a giant fuck you to COVID. And so I designed some stuff and I started rolling with it. So it's gone live, and I'm really excited.
Well, what is Chaos then?
Okay. So Chaos is a company. It's called Chaos Tactical. And the first thing I designed were silicone rings. And the silicone rings are basically for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioners or practitioners that work in environments where they can't have metal rings because they might snag. There's something called degloving. I don't know if you know what degloving is. So degloving is when you have a metal ring on your finger and it snags on something and it pulls. So it will pull all the skin and all the muscle off. So if you work in, say, you're like someone who cuts down trees, or your electrician, or you end up snagging it on something, you can deglove your finger. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the same thing. It's a grappling art. So if someone grabs onto a ring, it can be snagged. So silicone rings obviously are made out of silicone rubber. They won't snag. They can move. They're pliable. So I designed a ring that would actually match the belt color to the practitioner, because it wasn't out on the market. I'm like, I got to do this. And so the second part of this Chaos thing was, I've been into watches for the last 20 years. I love watches. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to design my own watch. So for the last 4.5 months, I've been designing a watch, and I got the prototype for it, and I've been testing it out for the last 6 weeks, and it's been awesome. So it's going to go to market in October, and it's geared for people who who are law enforcement, military, who have working jobs which are like, tough environments, and just kind of like the tactical look. So that's what I've been doing.
That's awesome. Are they going to be like digital or
they're analog and digital? They're both.
That's awesome. I love watches. I love like the brand Nixon. They do a lot with action sports stuff and that sort of thing. And so that's why I've been drawn to them, just for that. And the watch is cool. It has like the silicone band on it. which
Yep.
I love. Like, it's super comfortable for me to wear at work. I don't like the metal bands or anything like
Right.
that because it's super uncomfortable for me, always been, but I love watches. So
Cool.
that's awesome. I'm gonna have to check these out when they come out.
Yeah, I can't wait to put the pictures up on market. Like I was just saying this earlier. I was on another podcast and we were talking about business and the problem. So since I've run all these different companies, when I started, I just wanted to go to market right away with anything I had, right? I didn't have time to, I just like, oh, who cares about just putting prototypes out? Let's just go to market. And I've had all these failures. And so I've learned from these failures. I'm like, okay, let's slow it down. Let's make sure it's good. Let's put it to market because the customer needs to be like, oh, this is a great product. And so I've slowed it down, but it's still fun. Love it. I love the creative aspect of it.
That's awesome, man. What, like, so you just, COVID hit and you weren't like, woe is me. I know owning a gym can be tough. Like, it's got to be tough. My wife works in the fitness industry here. She kind of built a program in her gym that's kind of like she owns her own company. Like, but she definitely treats it that way. But just even working for the gyms and they shut down, that's in America, you know, that's in Texas even.
Mm-hmm.
It makes things really, really tough. You really have to like come up with some creative ways to sell things or to really just to keep your clientele happy so that when everything gets back to normal or somewhat normal, they come back.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what prompted you to just like jump into starting a brand new business in this time?
Well, like I said, I had time on my hands. I wasn't running the school. I wasn't there, you know, several days a week. And so I had time to just venture out creativity, to look at my creative like mindset and just, I had time. That's what it was. And obviously I'm working patrol, I'm working policing and stuff like that. But my waking hours, I was doing that. And someone said to me recently, they said, I don't know how you do it with all, you know, with all the work. Like, how do you do it? How do you have time? And the secret is it's not work, it's play. And when you look at it like that, you love doing it. So it's not wasted hours. It's not just like me going, oh, work. It's play to me.
It's super fun for you to just get off and like, that's your hobby, like going and
Totally.
researching this stuff and searching it out.
Yeah. And, you know, and like I do 2 podcasts as well. And for me, my podcasts they're not about making money. They're not about, I don't care how many listeners there are. It's actually, for me, it's a decompress. So I do law enforcement during my normal job. And then once a week, I'll get together with my buddies and we'll do the podcast. And that's just for me to decompress and have a good time. And like the one podcast that I do, it's totally irreverent. It's totally fun. It's about 80s culture, about 80s movies, action stuff. Talk about Viking things, ghosts, monsters, mayhem, martial arts. And that's all it is, right? It's me having fun with some buddies. And that's the fun part too.
So this is wild. Like, this is going down all sorts of things in my mind that I didn't even expect on this thing with the paranormal stuff. Obviously the Viking stuff is cool. I actually grew my hair out. I did the undercut just to braid it and grew my beard long so that I could do a braid down the back and a braid in the front so that it could be like a Viking style thing at one point. Like, I just kept growing it like as long as I could to try to get there. I thought it was super awesome. My wife doesn't really care for that look, so that had to go eventually. But I just dig, like, I dig anything warrior, tough. I don't want to say violence, but yeah, I kind of dig violence, like testing yourself in that realm or putting yourself in that position where you're like an honorable thing like that. That stuff always kind of has attracted me.
Yeah. And so there's a quote that I recently actually put up on my Facebook, and it's amazing because this kind of speaks to where I personally am. But the quote goes like this: when the ships were made of wood, men were made of steel. And it makes sense, right? Like, you never knew what was going to happen when you got on that Viking ship. You had to be tough. And I love it. I just love the whole warrior culture thing. And a lot of people play into, it's like, oh, you have a warrior mindset and you must be an alpha male and you don't like this. And you really want to, you know, it's about violence, and it has nothing to do with that. And it's a personal thing for me. I love it. And I love the whole culture around it. And it's not about espousing violence. It's just espousing survivability and adaptability.
There's something attractive about the toughness, I think. Like being a man, like especially males, I don't like the same movies my wife likes. She doesn't like to watch the same movies. She's like, no, you can watch that later. I don't like those style of things, but I enjoy it. Like it's something that there's something about toughness that is just attractive to men, I guess, like, or at least the majority of them. I do anyway. I like things that are tough. Like I like to be tough. I picture myself as being tough, even though I know, that nobody, a lot of people like to think that they have high pain thresholds. I don't think that at all. I just like to play that role. Like I think it's something that attracts me to it. Tough things, tough work, hard work, something that's difficult to do is awesome.
Right. But in 2020, we vilified toughness or that genre. I shouldn't like we as in like the other side, and it's just odd. You like do what you want to do. Like I'm not attacking people who don't like the tactical or warrior culture. It's like, what, if it makes you happy, I've always said this, if it makes you happy, do it. That's it. But the moment you start crossing it onto my front yard and start saying things, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. It's like, and I told you earlier, I'm a freedom guy. So, I will defend your right. And, but the moment you start encroaching on mine, we'll have a problem.
Yeah. How super important is it and you make a good point, because if you're going to be for freedom, you have to be for freedom for all the sides of people. Like you can't just be for freedom of the things that you enjoy. Like you enjoy Viking stuff. That's cool. Somebody else enjoys like planting roses and smelling them. That's cool. Go for it. Like you can't be like, hey, that's being a sissy if you're a man planting those roses. No, like I'm for freedom. That's what you enjoy. That's a similar mindset to, my stuff is I like people to have I have friends that are artists that are amazing. They're unreal. I don't have that sort of thing to paint and draw and to do that. I don't have that mindset, but I would definitely fight if anybody who came and attacked those people, even though we have different belief systems all the way around, I'm still his friend. I'm going to come and defend him at any sort of like, even if it's verbally, if it's somebody's picking on him or makes fun of him, whatever, of any of my friends like that, because it is all about freedom. Like we need all sorts of different type of people to contradict your ideas to make us all better.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we grow. But the old samurai saying that it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener during war, I still believe, right? So you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So anyway, you're a bit like, I could go off on all this stuff, and I definitely want to get to your paranormal thing, because that's like, you've done so many crazy, like fascinating things. Like what do you just see an interest in something like the paranormal, like, or whatever job, private investigator, you just go for it, or the jobs just happen to like come about?
I always try to do jobs that spark my interest. I think that's kind of how it worked. So private investigation, I grew up on Magnum PI. I'm like, that looks like a cool job. For the record, Aaron, it's a shit job. Right? So I did, because I didn't know, right? And you don't know until you try. So I did it for a little while. I went to school for it. And the job is completely different than what you think, right? That's like TV and reality. But that's why I did it. I saw Magnum PI and Tom Selleck, and like, I want to be that guy. So after I did that, I've always had an interest in the paranormal. I have an absolute huge love for mythology and vampires and UFOs. And I love conspiracy stuff. And it's just always sparked my interest. So I was like, as a hobby, I'm going to start investigating things. So when I was in radio, I had a radio program, and we would do paranormal investigation. So we'd do house, like ghost hunting. We go to houses. We'd follow up on leads in cemeteries where they saw apparitions. I had one episode where, this was years ago, this is 1995. We did an interview with a vampire. This guy claimed to be a vampire, and we had a 3-hour interview with him. And his story was amazing. We were like throwing all these questions, and he had an answer for everything. It was so fun. And then we had people call in, and they would ask him questions, and it was great.
So vampire, like the whole thing, how did you do that over radio? That seems like a difficult thing to do.
Not really. I mean, it's like, think about it, the pre-podcast, right? All it is you just have them sitting in the studio, and then people call in, and you talk, right? So our radio program that we were doing was from midnight to 5 a.m. So he could obviously be out because the sun wasn't up, and it was great.
So you did that? Did you do that for 5 years? You said you did radio for 5 years. Was it just the paranormal part, or was it something else?
So I had 3 different radio programs that I did while in radio. So one of them was called Laced in Darkness, which was the paranormal one. Then I had a martial art related one called Key Issues, and it was a play on words on the Japanese word of ki, which is ki, which means energy. So I would interview martial artists. So I did that. And then I had one radio program which was called The Matrix, which was basically electronica and techno music, and I did that with my buddy Stacy. So that was fun.
That's so cool. How long have you been so you've been in martial arts for a while then?
Yeah, 30 years. It was 1984, and the guy who got me into martial arts was, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name's Chuck Norris. So this is a true story. So I was 9 years old, and I was in Vegas with my parents, and we were at the lobby of a casino, and I saw Chuck Norris in the casino. And obviously, being a kid who watched action films, is like I knew who it was. So I tugged on my dad's arm and said, "Dad, that's Chuck Norris. Got to go talk to him." So we walked over there, and I'm looking at Chuck Norris, and he looks down at me, and he goes, "What's your name, kid?" And I'm like, "My name's Ari, sir." And he goes, "Do you do the martial arts?" And I said, "No, sir." And he goes, "Well, when you start, never stop." And then the next year, I got into the martial arts when I was 10, and 36 years later, here I am, still doing it. So that's my story of how I started the martial arts. So
you know what's funny about that? He lives like 30 minutes away from us.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. He lives right down the road. He's got like a ranch and stuff awesome. Here in Texas. Like, I mean, obviously he's got probably plenty of places to live, but I know people see him around town and stuff, and his family's around here and whatnot. So that's funny that you mentioned Chuck Norris. But man, I've heard like he was legit and just like actually a really cool dude. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, there's a lot of things about people that don't know about Chuck Norris. I mean, I don't know him personally. I'm not friends with him or anything like that. But I mean, he started his own martial art. You know, he's got a karate background. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which most people don't know.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So he used to do his TV show, Texas Ranger. He would have his instructors on, the Machado brothers, and those are the guys he learned from. So I think he's like a 3rd-degree black belt, like super legit. Like he's amazing.
That's insane. I didn't know. Yeah, there is a lot of things that you don't know, and a lot of things that you don't like you, for instance. Like if you have a jiu-jitsu school, you've been in martial arts for 30 years, all these different things, and yet you have such a wide variety. You have a podcast just on 80s culture, mm-hmm. which is not what you wouldn't think that, a guy that's into Viking stuff, police officer, jiu-jitsu, would be 80s culture, techno music, and finding ghosts.
Right. Well, we all have interests, right? I mean, it's just like, why be stereotyped and pigeonholed into certain things? I'm just trying to pursue things that I love, because we only get one kick at this, in my opinion. We've got one life to live, and I'm trying to maximize it, man.
So the business what businesses do you have currently right now that are going?
I have my martial art business, Fierce Studio, which is in Victoria, British Columbia, doing that for the last 17 and a half years. I have my Chaos, which I just started, which has been awesome. I have Invictus Leo Jiu-Jitsu Collective, which I started last year with my buddy Jason, which you know. Yep. So we did that, which was basically getting officers trained in jiu-jitsu, and it turned into kind of this movement, and it's blown up. I believe probably in the next year, it's going to get even bigger. The momentum has been amazing. So obviously an advocate for use of force and retraining of police officers. So I have that going on. So those are my main ones, I would say right now.
So that's interesting. It's something, the retraining of police officers is something that's a super hot topic. And I think your school, in fact, when all the stuff was going down here, that's the first thing I thought of was that school. And after talking, having him on the podcast was they need more they don't need to take away things like, chokeholds. They need more training on how to use them properly. I would think it's just like, you don't ever want to see an overweight cop. That should be a requirement. Like, they shouldn't be worrying about fat shaming people. You should be in shape if that's your responsibility as a cop. You know what I mean? At least that's the way I look at it. And I don't know what your thoughts are being a cop and involved in martial arts and having to actually apply it and work with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sensitive subject, but what typically happens is police officers get complacent, or they come out of patrol and maybe they're in detective work and they're not on the street anymore. So their need for use of force and exercise starts to wane, right? They're using their minds, and they're great cops, but they don't need that physicality anymore. However, having said that, what people don't realize is doing jiu-jitsu and being active helps with the whole mental aspect anyway. You may never be in a fight in your life, but being in shape, being healthy, having a stress relief, those are all massive benefits. Like, that's why I think people should do martial arts, and they should work out. I mean, I'm not a specimen. I'm not a superhero, but it keeps my mind sharp, and it keeps me just in shape for when it happens. So I always tell people that cops have three things. The first thing that most cops have is heart. So if they're in a physical confrontation, they have heart. So that means they're going to keep going no matter what the odds are. The second thing that most cops have is that they're in shape, because police actually revolves around a workout culture. I would say many people in my department, they work out, they go to the gym, they lift weights, they do CrossFit, fantastic. So you've got heart, you're now in shape. But the last thing that most people are lacking is technique. So if you go around and think that you can hammer everything and strengthen everything and use your strength and everything, you're sorely mistaken, because it's only going to take one person with a little bit of knowledge, and you're like, oh my God, I can't handle this person. Now I have to shoot them when I could actually use technique to control them. That's where we start getting into problems, and you end up on YouTube videos.
Yeah. And that's the scary part. And that you're so right. Like, I've done it, 3 times. I think I've gone to a jiu-jitsu place 3 times before. And I've told the story a bunch of times. Like, I almost quit CrossFit to go there. I just made some friends at CrossFit. They both are attractive to me for the same reasons. And that is the culture and the community and the struggle and, that sort of thing in the type of workouts. But the level, you're exactly right. Like, a little dude. I was rolling with a little guy one of the first times, and I'm not a big guy, right? But I was definitely way stronger than him. I could pick him up while he was in a hold, and he had a mouth guard in, and I'm rolling with him, and I'm like, dude, I'm just kind of tossing this guy around, right? And he pauses for a second, and he takes his mouthpiece out, and he's like, you need to tap. And I was like, what do you mean I need to tap? Nothing's going on. And he just puts his mouthpiece back in and does like one little fidget. And I was like, okay, I get it. Now I need to tap. Gotcha. So the technique is, I thought I was actually dominating him because he was in guard on the ground and I'm on top. And I'm like, this is no big deal. And then he just, I don't even know exactly what he did. I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like, what just happened is kind of amazing. So the technique part, but I think that goes to anything in life, like whatever you're doing. Yeah. If you just, you can't just go in and jump to the top of anything. There's levels to it. You have to learn the fundamentals properly. Otherwise, you're going to spend time going backwards to try to get better.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? And that's just like for CrossFit or anything, like you said. So, but today people are impatient. They want it now. They don't want to spend the time. So there's these gaps that end up showing in whatever they're doing. If it's business, if it's CrossFit, if it's BJJ. So the rush is the problem.
Well, what have people done with your gym shut down? What do people do to practice?
So, I mean, we just opened up and there's obviously protocols in place, and there have been people that have been practicing. They're practicing at their houses with their small group of friends and things like that. So martial arts got pushed underground, and just because you didn't see it didn't mean that it wasn't happening. Right. So you have to remember that, because it was very similar to when the Americans, when America won against Japan, they actually outlawed martial arts in 1945 in Japan. They prohibited the Japanese from practicing. And the reason they did that is because they didn't want the natives to know how to fight. And so that happened for quite a few years. It actually was not allowed. However, all the martial arts went underground. Do you think the Japanese stopped practicing? Didn't happen, right? And so there's examples of this through history. And so it's the same thing now in COVID. It's like, oh, all the gyms are shut down, so all these martial artists aren't practicing. It was happening. So
it's kind of tough to stop people. Like, you're in Canada. I don't know the laws in Canada, the rules. Like, I've learned real quick to not to not believe what's put out there in the TV or the media or the news about places, because it's oftentimes a lot different when you actually go there and you actually live in it and visit it, and you get to see the different areas. So I don't know what it's like there, but I know here, if you try, like, no matter where it is, if it's in a more liberal state or if it's in a more conservative state, if you try to take people's freedom away of the things that they enjoy, they're going to figure out a way, some way to do it. It's just like speakeasies and alcohol. Like, people wanted to drink, they made it happen. People want to do drugs, they make it happen. Like, they're going to do it, like, and practice those things. And almost, if you tell them no, they're going to go even more overboard and start, like, they're going to start obsessing about it in all sorts of different areas.
You're totally right. And there's some people that are basically like, listen to the government. And I'm not anti-government. Let's just say that right now. I'm not anti-government, but it's like the government knows best, and let's follow their protocols. And when they say it's safe to do things, we will now do things. And as you've already pointed out, the misinformation, the media, we're being told, and I don't trust either side, right? So I need to do my research. I always do my research, and it absolutely kills me. I watch Facebook and someone puts a picture of someone on Facebook and they're like, look at this person. This is what's going on. And I'd like, have you fact checked that? Because I can tell you right now that that's not true. And then they're like, oh, well, I saw it on someone else's feed, so I just reshared it. And all they're doing is, it's just a propagation of misinformation. And Facebook is not a news source. Newsflash for you. So if that's where you're getting your shit from, you should probably check yourself. Having said that, looking at news outlets, it's the same thing. Like, it takes some time. So the whole COVID thing is crazy. And there's some things that I personally believe. There's some things that I have researched. There's some things that I actually know. And that's how I make my worldview. So I'm very wary if I hear things like, all the hospitals are full, everyone's dying, it's the end of the world. Okay, that's one thing. I'm also wary when people go, it's not going on, doctors say it's fake, the hospitals aren't full, no one gets COVID, and diarrhea kills more people than COVID, and whatever. I'm like, okay, you're that part, I got it, right? So just use your fucking brain. That's all you need to do.
That's like the perfect, more people die from diarrhea than COVID. That's a perfect impersonation. It's so silly because it's so true. That it's exactly the way they do it. If you don't wear a mask, or if you question anything about it, you're either one side or the other. You can't be like, wait a second, I think that if you're picking sides when it's a virus, you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the dumb thing. Here's the dumb thing, Aaron. So then there's the people who are like me that are like in the middle, and it's like, well, I know what I'm doing, right? And so I'm gonna shit on myself here. So people are like, well, he's getting information, he does his own thing, but fuck, he doesn't know. And like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know everything either, but I think I'm right. But who knows, right?
It's so true. Like, it's so wacky. It's a crazy thing. I have a different advantage. I always say, like, not everybody grows up with a nurse or medical people. I had two of them. My grandpa was a nurse, and my mom was a nurse, and they went around everywhere. And I grew up in it from the time I was born till, my mom is, my grandpa's passed on, but my mom still has her license. She's up in Fort Worth. And,
right.
So I have a different perspective. Like, she has a realistic perspective. Is like, is the virus real? Absolutely, the virus is real. how do viruses work? This is how they work. Like, there's certain fundamentals of the way a virus works all the way around. And to think that a man can just come out there and put a policy out and stop the virus is insane. It's
I
a
know.
false sense of hope to people. But if you say that, if you say, hey, this policy is not going to save you from the virus, you got to save you from the virus. You got to be like, you've got to do the things, or, you know, do your research, look into it, see what's best for you. Maybe boost your immune system, get healthy while you're in quarantine. I don't know, throw some ideas out there. They're just going to be like, no, you're killing people. No.
I know.
What did I do?
And what's even right? What's even scarier is, so now that social media, it's 2020, we open Instagram and we see these 1-minute videos. And so the latest one that I saw, which is amazing, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but this is what I saw. It has the list of, I'm going to say 15 or 20 killers in the world. And then it starts in January this year and it goes to July. And so you've got things like the flu, you've got heart disease, you know what I mean? It's got this graph, and it says how many people have died. And so it's like January and then February, and then you don't see COVID, and all of a sudden COVID goes, whoop, it's right at the bottom. And then the numbers are starting to move up, and then it goes, whoop, 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 and it starts to move up as we move in. So, you know, now it's like number 3 in the world killer. It's like 650,000 fatalities, and it's at the top. But watching that graph in 1 minute little increment of watching it going, oh, we're fine. And all of a sudden like, holy shit. And it's there, and you watch it and you're going, it's the end of the world, you know? And it gets us emotionally, it's visceral, right? And then it's like, I saw this graph, you know, Aaron, have you seen this graph? Have you seen it? This is true right here. Look on your Instagram. And then you start sharing it, and people are like, it's crazy. So people just need to pause, reflect, and do the research. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's one, you bring up a good point. And it's one thing that I think jiu-jitsu or some sort of tough activity, like when I say tough, something you struggle to get through. I don't even care what it is. It could be any sort of discipline that works your mind, works your body physically, whatever it is, but something that's difficult that you have to try at, put a lot of effort in and practice to, because it's like a weird reaction to this thing emotionally, like what you just said. Jiu-jitsu, if you freak out emotionally, you're going to lose. Like, you can't win. Being a cop, you can't freak out emotionally. Like, you need to be the better one and the calm one so that you can assess the situation correctly. Anybody in their job, anything that I do, like in my minuscule daily life, anytime that I've been on the emotional side of things, it's never worked out correctly. But anytime that I've stepped back and I look at it and go, okay, take what I want and emotions out of it, and let's look at the situation. Now let's deal with what I want the outcome to be. It always works out better.
So I agree with that, because I'm a logic guy, you know, I'm a science guy and that. And however, I have learned, I got this from my wife, and I would give her a lot of credit, that we also vilify the emotional response from people, saying, well, if they have an emotional response, it's not logical, so it's incorrect. And that is actually incorrect. There are some emotional responses which are really good for situations. We can generate and we can focus anger or whatever your emotion is for a greater good. And so I have to be careful, because especially, you know, the male, the logical side, and they say the female emotional side, right? And this is what typically happens. And what I've really been doing over the last 10 years is actually trying to combine them and making sure that I am understanding the other side. Because if you do, you're able to articulate better rather than just yelling at someone about your cause. So actually listening is a skill set that I think that people should do. So you have to balance it, I think. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's been a struggle, because I am a guy and we think differently, but I think it's important.
I think that's another important thing, is like, there's always an answer in the middle usually.
Yeah.
Like, it's usually always in the middle. It's never like extreme one side or the other. There's usually like a place where both come together, and that's kind of correct. And when I say emotional stuff, I'm definitely like a kind-hearted guy. I'm not a violent human being. I'm like the softest dude in the world. And And so I get the emotional part, making decisions wise. And as a guy, that's what you do. I mean, most guys do that. They let's make a logical decision. Let's look at something.
Yep.
This situation has blown up the emotional side. Like people's, and I can narrow down. This is just my opinion from what I see from growing up being homeschooled and socialization of kids and like the whole thing. And just from my common sense education is that we're social creatures. We like to be around people. No matter how introverted you are, you like to be around, talk to your friends, hang out with them. And that physical, like being around people physically. And when you sit around and you have nothing but Twitter and that becomes your reality, and Instagram and Facebook, like you said, with these news sources, and then your emotional side starts to kick in, you have nobody to keep you in check. You have nobody to bounce things off of and to basically bring you back to that middle. Like you said, it's struggle for you. It's a struggle for me. It's a struggle for everybody. We lean one side, no matter, we've got bias. So like, then it blows up into just 100% an emotional rage of this Facebook, this graph, this is it. Right. And then it's like, if you don't believe this graph, you're killing people, Ari. How can you do that?
Yeah. And you know, I saw this recently, but there's some guy sitting next to a waterfall on a beach or like somewhere in the wild without a full phone. And he's not connected to the internet, and he doesn't realize how angry and scared he should be because he's not connected. Right. And there's people out there that are like that. It's like, I'm not connected, so it's actually not affecting me. We're only affected by what we know. So
it's so true. Like we're putting like stuff in the house. We're doing a bunch of home stuff, and I put my phone up and I don't have it on the weekends. Basically, it just stays up there. And so I don't even click, scroll, nothing. I'm the happiest. I'm so happy because there's no negative information going in our brain. It's just, I'm in the moment with my family, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's super nice to be aware. You gotta be aware of what's going on, but at the same time, to be able to decipher and recharge, and the things that you take in are so important. Like surrounding yourself with good people. And that's one thing I love the jiu-jitsu culture with. And like, you're a business owner, you can't surround yourself with nothing but a bunch of people who aren't ambitious. Otherwise it won't benefit you one way or the, like your businesses. I just want to be around somebody who's successful so that I can be successful. Like I can pick up their habits and I can learn from them. That's one thing I love about the podcast, talking to people like you. It's like, I'm talking to a guy that started a business in a pandemic. You just started a tape business, right? Like the athletic tape stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot about that one.
Going on. And we'll get to that for sure. Definitely got to promote it. But like, you've started all this stuff. I can learn so much stuff from people like you, like being around and talking to you. And that's the sort of information I want to bring in my head. People have a choice of who it is they hang around.
Yeah, I agree.
But it takes like something like signing up for your jiu-jitsu, you know, it takes that step, that scary step of like, none of my friends go and do this. I have to, well, you know what? I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go to class in a foreign place where you don't know anybody.
Yep. Yeah. That's the scariest part of jiu-jitsu. The scariest part of anything is actually walking through the door, you know, being on the mat. Once you through the door, that's the hardest part. And then now you're on the mat and it's like, okay, I've already broken that barrier. But I've literally, this is true stories. I've had people say, I've walked by your studio, your academy for 5 years. 5 years. I've looked at it, thought about, haven't done it. And then whatever it was, they eventually did it. And now they're students. And I'm not talking about like, I'm not saying 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years. So it shows you the process that people go through. Some people have no problems taking chances and they dive in and they're ready for it. Other people are cautious or scared. So.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's like you. Obviously, you don't have any problem taking chances. You're like, business, let's do it. Business, let's do it. Learn from your mistakes.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's a scary thing. Like, and I love it so much. That's why I love competition of any sort, is people that are willing to, no matter what they do, if they're willing to put something out there in front of others and risk being embarrassed or failing, then that like, you've already won. Like that person, I have respect for that person. They've earned respect because No, but like very few people seem to have that ability to take that step. Like walking through the door of your jujitsu gym, you think about the actual percentage of people in the population that do jujitsu. It's not
Yep.
a lot. And it's not a lot. It takes a lot to walk through that door. Anything that you're trying to do, you know, we used an artist earlier, so I'll just do that. There's a famous artist painting in a gallery, and an art, you know, a wannabe artist is coming, you know, somebody aspiring is walking by and sees him. He's probably going to walk by that door, not go in and say, hi, how are you? I'm into art.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
That's a super scary thing. But then a place like yours, it get it raises the confidence level up of people when you do that. Like it just takes that one step. When you hear that, you're like, oh man, this person's life just changed.
Yeah, and that's the best part of it, right? Like watching that change and seeing how it's helped them. That's the payoff for what we do. I mean, you ask any instructor, it's like, wow, positive. They've lost weight. They're in a good mood. They're not depressed. They don't have PTSD, or they have PTSD, but it's helped managing that. Whatever it is.
So you have a wife. You have all these businesses going on. You're a cop. How do you how do you manage running the jujitsu studio, like the studio, and being a cop? Like, do you have like a bunch of people that you hire to handle that for you that you trust, and then you check in on it? Or how does that, like, how do you manage running all of these? I know they're fun and it's awesome, but you also have to manage all these things and be a cop and a husband at the same time.
Yeah, so my wife and I run the studio from like an administrative point of view. I have amazing teachers, students of mine that are teaching, black belts and purple belts that are teaching, brown belts. And so I couldn't do it without them. So we've passed on. So giving them the opportunity to be instructors and teach, it's been happening for years. So there's a good synergy that goes on with that. I work shift work, so I'll work 2 days and then 2 nights. So it's impossible for me to be like, I'm going to teach on Wednesdays at 6 because it changes all the time for me. So I get in there at different times. So that consistency with my students, I'm forever grateful for them. So that's how I do it. I'm not retired. I don't have, I'm not working from like 6 to 4 so I can go at night and do it like that. So that's not the case for me, but that's how I do it. And I balance it. But you know, I've been doing it for a long time, and you can't be afraid of change, in my opinion. You can't be afraid of walking away from things when the time is right. You'll see this in MMA, or fighters, they stay too long, or boxers, they stay too long. And then it's like, oh, why are they still in the game? You know, they should have gone out up here, and now they're punch drunk and they're going in, and you just don't want to see it. Like Chuck Liddell, prime example, love him, had the most amazing fights, but he was going in there with concussions and he was getting knocked out. And it's just like, please just retire. You did great things. So a lot of people can't let go. And I'm okay with letting things go when the time is right. And it's like, okay, it's run its course, or it needs to go in a new direction. So.
And when so with business and stuff, like if you love something, like it's your passion, that's where the emotion's going to come in for you, I imagine. Like when you're like, you're emotionally tied to martial arts, you've been doing it for 30 years. That's something that, or 30 plus years, right? That's something that emotionally it's part of who you are, almost like you care about it. You have your studio. How do you realize, just like that fighter who cares about stepping in the ring, like Chuck Liddell, I agree with you. I also try to get in his mindset of like, if I love something so much, like if it was such a passion, like hearing the crowd roar and that just got my juices flowing, whatever it is, how do you know when to call one of those, on a smaller level, the businesses that you start? Like you obviously have a passion for them, you start them. How do you know when to go, this is the time that I need to let this one go?
I think, well, there's a couple things. I mean, you have to look at it from a financial perspective. You have to look at energy, you know, how much energy you want to put into it. What's it doing to you on an emotional level on a daily basis? So I've had businesses that have not done well, that I've let go. I've learned a lot from them. So I don't have any regrets, but it's like, well, why am it just didn't work. You know, I had all these pieces together, but they didn't gel. And they started kind of crumbling. So I took them and I put them in a box and I said, okay, I'm going to stop and restart and do something else. So I'm just building on that. And to go back on the kind of the Chuck Liddell, loving the roar of the crowd and all that things, you have to be careful on what your purpose is, right? So I always think, what's your purpose? Why are you there? Are you living for the roar of the crowd? Because the crowd will not always be there. You need to be your biggest fan. You can't rely on other people to be your biggest fan. Because if you do, you'll never live up to their expectation. You will fail. You will get knocked out. You'll start to be called a has-been or whatever. So you have to be your biggest fan, and you have to listen to yourself. And so that's the thing that I always try to gauge, rather than out there. It has to be right here. So.
And I'm assuming with business that would relate to something as far as, you want it to see it succeed, and people looking outward, the crowd, so to speak, is going to be going like waiting to see if you fail.
Yeah. And I've had that lots. I've had detractors and enemies of mine that are being like, they want to see you fail, right? They want to see you go under and stuff. And if I close my school tomorrow, I know that I would never stop jiu-jitsu. I know I'll always practice. I know I'll always teach in some way. So if my school closes because of COVID or because of a personal thing, or it's like, I'm done and I'm passing on to someone else, it's not a failure to me. It's like, I know that I will continue in a different way. So you just have to keep listening to that little voice in your head, rather than to always listen to the crowd. Obviously, you need to listen to people who are close to you, because they will be able to give you a perspective that you may not see. Your wife be like, Aaron, you should look at this. And we all go through it. You're laughing because it's true, because it happens to me all the time, dude. So,
well, that's I meant like finding that's why one reason I mentioned your wife and everything is because it takes a supportive partner to run that many businesses and to be to do those things. It takes a supportive partner. It really does. And my wife is that same way for me, but I also know, which is one of the things I love, is that I'm not a little bit. I would take all the chances in the world. Like I would just throw everything out there, to the point where I probably would be reckless with money because I think this one's going to do it. And I'm not a gambler, but on things that I'm in control of or sort of in control of, I'll roll the dice. I may not make it, but I'm not scared to fail. Like that doesn't exist in my head for some reason. And
yeah,
I go to her and go, okay, what do you think about this idea? And then she'll go, that's not a good idea. And then she'll explain why, because she can come at it from an outside. She's not in my head. She's outside listening to what I'm saying, going, yeah, that's not going to work. But this may work. Maybe you go and rethink it and come back with a different thing. Okay. Let me go see if I can work that out.
Yeah, I had this discussion with Jason, who's my partner in Invictus, and we were talking about some new product, some new apparel that we're going to come out with. And I said to him, it's like, hey, do you want to maybe have like a small subcommittee to look at our design or whatever like that? And we had decided actually no. So there is a time and place to do that. But also, if you start asking, say, 10 people what their opinions are, you're going to get 10 different opinions on it. And so now you're like, well, I'm struggling to what design do I go for and what's good and what's bad. Sometimes you need to buckle down and go, okay, I'm sticking with this. This is how we're going to do it. And I know what's best. So there is a balance there. Like, and sometimes you're wrong. Like you said, you roll the dice, and I've rolled the dice, and I got ones. And it's not working. So
that's all. You know what? I agree with you when you put it that way, and like explaining it like that's perfect. I have one person that I go to for that. I definitely, I don't like, sometimes when I think I know something, I'm pretty sure in my head that's what I like. And so I don't really need their opinion. So I'm different in that sense, where I have like a few people that I trust, very few. It's a very tiny amount of people where I would even go with that question. But if I think that person is not going to give me like the perspective on it, as far as like, if I don't think they're going to come from an honest perspective of weighing the pros and cons, I won't even ask them that question.
Right.
Like it won't even come out of my mouth. If I know they're going to be to the one side where they're going to be like, that's a dumb idea. Who would start a tape company? You know, why would anybody do that? You got to start an accounting firm. You got to be a lawyer. You know, I'm not going to go ask that person. Like, they could be my best
Right.
friend. I can't trust that, you know, because
Yep.
you're not seeing that the world has all different kinds of people. You know, the world has people that need tape,
Yep.
right?
Totally.
So what is the tape exactly? Because I saw the thing, the fuzz. It just said fuzz on it, and this is what actually I really wanted to have, like, started in my mind. I wanted to have you on the podcast because you started this business in the middle of, like, I think, you know, you were talking about your jiu-jitsu thing being closed on Instagram, and then all of a sudden fuzz tape pops up. You're starting another business in there. So explain a little bit, like, how did that come about, and what is it?
So in jiu-jitsu circles, we use, for lack of a better term, hockey tape. And we use it on our fingers and on our wrists because of joints and just for stability and stuff like that. It's become part of the jiu-jitsu culture in many people. So if you look at jiu-jitsu practitioners, you'll see they'll tape up their fingers. It's just for joints and for grip, and because we have sore wrists. And so we do that a lot. So the hockey tape, which is normally, like, I don't know, like an inch and a half maybe wide. So now they're actually quite smaller, right? So different strips that can go around your fingers. And there's a few companies out there. So this is how fuzz tape came to be. There was a tape company out there which ended up posting something. They're like the largest tape company out there, and they ended up posting something on their website about not supporting police and Blue Lives Matter and things like that. And it pissed off the entire police community that does jiu-jitsu. In one felled swoop, they lost thousands of people who were part of their thing, right? And it's totally up to them. It's their business. They can do what they want. And I vote, again, freedom guy, do what you want. And it doesn't mean that we weren't for Black Lives Matter or for Blue Lives. So there's all this thing. So he put this information out, which was incorrect, in my opinion, because he said, I did research about what it stands for. And of course he pissed us off. So I was approached by Jason, and Jason said, hey, I was talking to Mike the cop, who's a big social media guy. He's, was a police officer. And then another buddy of ours, Jason from Jiu Jitsu 5.0. And the four of us got together and said, you know what, we're going to start our own tape company, because we now don't have a tape company to use. So let's start our own. And so we announced it, and we went through names, and we went through this creative process. And so we decided to call it Fuzz Tape. So Fuzz Tape, obviously the fuzz being police. And if you look at our logo, it's kind of a 70s inspired thing, the sunglasses, the aviators with the mustache. And so it was totally fun. And that's kind of how we wanted to do it. So we started looking at suppliers, and we've locked down a supplier, and we're going to develop our own tape, and we're going to market it to people who support police. They love jiu-jitsu, and that's it. So it's just a niche. There's a market there for it. We saw it. That other company created our business because of what they did. And I'm sure we're not going to please everyone. I understand that. And we're not against anyone. So our motto is rolls for everyone. So tape rolls for everyone. So if you are a police person, great. If you're a first responder, great. If you're not, great. We don't care. If you're an enemy, great. You buy our stuff too. Like, we're for everyone. We're not going to exclude you. And you can buy it or you don't have to buy it. So that's how it started.
So is it like super fun? I mean, tape is a big thing in obviously any sort of athletic thing, but like CrossFitters and everybody, they get kind of like obsessive about the different tools and gadgets that you can use. So like the tape, is it like flexible, super sticky, that super sticky state? Because I played hockey, like, I love hockey. It's awesome. But that tape can be kind of stiff.
Yeah.
Depending on which one you're putting on. So is it going to be like flexible where obviously your jiu-jitsu, you got to be able to move
right
joints around and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's flexible. It's like rock climbers use it, and CrossFitters do use the tape too. But so without giving any trade secrets, because I've learned a lot about tape in the last month, which I didn't know, of what it's made out of. There's certain materials, sussing out the sources and stuff like that. Like, I'm one of those people that you piss me off, I'm going to do my research. And so I ended up doing my research. I'm like, okay, well, where did this other company get their tape from? Because I'm going to find out. Right. And so now we've understood the composition of the tape. So yeah, it's flexible. there's really nothing to it, right? And it's not that our tape is going to be better than anyone else's tape. I mean, it's going to be, but it's just that it's what people want to support, right? And the great thing about fuzz tape that we absolutely love is there are 4 of us and we're all jackasses. So we are going to make fun of ourselves. We're going to be putting out these videos, these 70s videos of the tape, and like it's totally weird and fun. The tape itself is not going to just be standard white tape and black tape. We're actually going to have some patterns on it, which will be really fun. So when you see one of our competitors that are using the tape on the mat, instantly you'll go, oh, that's a fuzz tape person. I can tell by the color of the logo or whatever they have on the tape. So that's what we're going to do.
Genius.
Yep.
That's a genius way of doing it. Like when you actually see it on there, you know that it's your stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm sure that idea is now going to be stolen by that other company. So
somebody's got to actually do it. You know what I mean? Somebody's got to actually do it. Like what you said, these people came out and out of this, well, if you want to say out of emotion of people getting mad and saying Blue Lives, not supporting Blue Lives Matter or the cops or whatever, you guys turned around and said, there's a market for X, Y, and Z. Look how many people are mad at this.
Yeah.
We can sell a freedom tape, so to speak, where you're like, hey, anybody can have it. Like, this is tape. It's like a virus. It goes to anybody.
Right.
No.
And any company, like, you're going to support what you're going to support. And I get that. And so, but we realize that there is a market out for it, and mark my words, the company will do very well.
I'm sure, man. It really doesn't look like you've lost. If you like from the outside and just hearing you talk, it doesn't look like you've lost much. Like, you know what I mean? It seems like success. Now, I know that's probably not true at all, but from the outside, you're saying it like this all comes from education of those losses, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So Aaron, it's taken 20 years to become an overnight success.
That's a good way of putting it. 20 years. So you've been pursuing businesses on your own for 20 years?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun. So, and I probably won't stop, like some other idea will creep in and I'd be like, oh, well, I'm probably try this too. But right now I'm in my chaos thing, and that's kind of where I put all my time, energy, and money at the moment. So that's going to be the fun one right now.
So just for a business perspective, and somebody's out there listening, I know we've probably been talking, I don't even know how long we've been talking. It's just super fun. But for a business perspective, somebody's that like looking or on the edge and doesn't know if they want to take that jump, or they go, hey, Ari must have had lots of money just to throw at all these different businesses and all that sort of stuff. Does it take a lot of financial stuff, or did you just work, like save up, work things out, manage your costs? Like, how did that go? Did money have anything to do with it, or did you just work around it?
Well, money is not an infinite. I don't have $1 million in the bank. I don't have some secret fund or anything like that. I've put myself in debt a lot over the years to do it. A line of credit cards. I've had money that I've saved up. So it's been all those different things. So you don't handicap yourself on just the money aspect. You might have to start small and then move to bigger. So your vision is really important. So if you're like, you know what, I'm going to order 10,000 watches. That's not practical. You're not going to have the capital to do it unless you are a millionaire. So you'll have to start small, and it will take an investment, and you may fail. So taking the time and effort to research the market, to understand things, super important. I'm all about sharing kind of secrets about the business. I think it's important that, I'm willing to give away more than I'm willing to receive. And maybe that's a failing, but a lot of people will hold these secrets to themselves and be like, hey, Ari, what's the secret? Or how do I go about making a logo or things like that? And like, I'm not going to tell you. You just kind of figure it out because I don't want to give my secret away. That's not right. I think you should tell people. So I just was talking to one of my buddies today, and he sent me some logos. He texted me and he's like, hey, what do you think of my logos? So I looked at it and I'm like, you know what, it's a little bit too basic. And this is my opinion. This is what you need. And so I started giving him all my advice on what I think about logo creation, because I've created a lot of logos in my time. And I'm like, this is what you need. Do you just want words on it? But I think you should probably have a logo as well. I think you can do a lot more, creative stuff with the font. It's just basic Arial font. It's too boring. And kind of, we went down that road. So I love sharing business tips, and I'm not an expert, but I'm also a big proponent. Do you know who Gary Vee is?
Yes. Yeah.
Love Gary Vee. I listen to a ton of his stuff, and I agree with, much of what he says about business, and smart guy. So you should give away a lot of stuff, right? Because if you're going to build that rapport with people, you shouldn't hold everything super close to your chest. And it's like, I'm not going to tell you the secrets. You got to fucking figure it out. It's like, well, do you care about people? So
I've said this a lot, and I firmly believe it. I think you probably get back every bit and more by giving things away with the right intention for free.
Yeah.
Than you ever do holding on to any secret. Like,
yeah.
If you look at anybody who's uber successful, Gary Vee, for example, uber successful, and how he gave everything away for free.
Yeah.
He gave everything away for, like, you can listen, and really, I've read his books. You can get everything that's in his books for free if you really want it. If you want it, I mean, you can sit down with the book and go straight through, so that's an advantage. But you can get all of his lessons by just listening to his stuff. He gives it to you for free. Like,
totally.
Anybody who's on YouTube that's made money, they give everything away for free. They're giving their entertainment, their knowledge, their advice, everything. They're giving it all away for free. Like, the people who seem to be hit another level, they seem to do it opposite than what people think they do. And that is, no, you give it. Like, you just give. Like, if you're in it for the right reasons, you're going to want to give.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm going to continue to try to do that. I mean, and I'm listening to those people who are giving free stuff away. And I should also note, I am paying for stuff too. Like, I will support businesses. I will support people. I have no problem paying. When people come to you and they're like, I want free shit, I'm like, okay. So I will support. I've bought so many things of friends and people that I've admired, and like, did I need it? Probably not, but I wanted to support them because I know how hard small business is. And I'm such a huge proponent for small businesses. And I love seeing success stories. Like, that's what gets me up in the morning. It's not just me. It's watching someone going, hey, my podcast, someone bought my podcast and they want me to do. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, good for you. So those are the victories that I am around for, that I cheer for.
Yeah, I love it, man. It gets me fired up, man. You got me fired up just talking to you. The Viking shield in the back, the whole thing, man. That's super. It's awesome. Like, I enjoy your perspective on business, on life in general. Like, that you can not let something like this pandemic hold you back from pulling the trigger on starting a business. Your mindset's not. That's what I had Justin Sue. I don't know if you know who he is, but I had him on the podcast. He works for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, the baseball team, as like a mental coach. And he was saying, like, the true definition of being an optimist is not like the glass, like everything's roses and everything's perfect all the time. It's seeing the obstacles and then constantly trying to figure out a way to get through them.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be successful one way or the other. That it's not a failure. It's a learning experience, but you don't ever look at it as, oh, all this bad stuff's happening to me. Woe is me. You're never a victim. You're always like, how do I get past this? Like, okay, let's stop. Let's figure it out. And so that's your, like, you definitely live that sort of thing by starting all those businesses. I could listen to your stuff all day long.
Well, I'll tell you where I got it from. And this is just a quick story. I got this problem solving from when I was probably about 9 or 8 years old. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. And what role playing did was it allowed you to problem solve. And everyone used to call, we were geeks and nerds and we were doing dumb shit. And, the great thing is the geek shall inherit the earth. And so all this problem solving that I learned from playing role playing in Dungeons and Dragons is being applied to my everyday life. When I was going through the police process and I was being interviewed, I literally was using concepts and things that I learned as a kid in role playing to navigate these tough questions. And I was just like, no, it's not tough. I can do this. I'm having a conversation with people. Here's my problem solving. Like I had a harder adventure with my dungeon master when I was 14 than I am with this interview. Right. So
obviously I've never been, I was the jock. So I was never into Dungeons and Dragons. I'm the guy that said dorks and geeks, you know.
totally.
I will still make fun of certain things just because it's funny. Like I joke around, but I learned a lot growing up that like, okay, those like there's things that I like that are super dorky. And then I realized them later on. I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably rethink the way that I say things and do things. But that's interesting that you learned that from Dungeons and Dragons. Like I would never thought, you know, a game like that can teach you those sort of lessons.
Totally. And the scary thing is some of the toughest people in the world are geeks that can kill you, you know? So I'm a nerd assassin now, right? You know, I'm a huge geek, but I've got 4 black belts and I can shoot a gun. So I'm doing okay.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about much. Like, what did you call me? I don't even have to waste my time with you, Mr. Jock Boy. All right, this has been an absolute blast. Let everybody know where they can find, like, give them all your handles, tags, wherever they can go to find your stuff.
Sure. So if you want to go to my chaos site, the URL is enterchaos.com, and selling the silicone rings if you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then tactical watches will land probably in October. So there's gonna be some really cool stuff on there. We have an Instagram, which is Chaos Rings. That's there. If you want to follow our Invictus, the Invictus Leo, so that's for law enforcement, first responders. It's a great cause. We are doing seminars around the country. So that's Invictus LEO and official, which you can find on Instagram. We have a website, which is invictusleo.com. So there's that. Obviously, Fuzz Tape is coming. You can also find us on Instagram. You just have to put in Fuzz Tape and you'll see all the dumb shit that we're putting on there. And that's going to be great. And the website for that is fuzztape.co. And then I have my personal stuff. You can just find me on Instagram, which is Ari Kay, or Facebook. Yeah.
I'll put it all in the show notes, man. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. This is a blast.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Aaron.